The final moments of any battle are rarely remembered the way they happened. Reports are rewritten, names are misplaced, and the truth gets buried under medals, politics, and time. But some stories disappear so completely that even historians can only guess what truly happened. This is one of those stories, a last stand so brutal, so impossible, that it was almost erased forever, not because it lacked courage, but because no one walked away to tell it. It begins at an isolated ridge on the edge of a war most people have forgotten. A narrow strip of land overlooked by command, dismissed by strategists, and barely marked on the map. Yet for the small platoon stationed there, it was the entire world, 32 men, tired, undersupplied, surrounded by terrain that offered no mercy. They were sent not to win, but simply to delay the enemy long enough for civilians in the valley to escape, a mission expected to last 2 hours at most. No one knew it would become a 12-hour nightmare. Their commanding officer was Captain Elias Ward, a man known not for speeches or medals, but for his unnerving sense of awareness. He could read silence like a book, and on that morning, as fog crawled across the ridge, he felt something wrong. Not in what he could see, but in what he couldn't. The birds had vanished, the wind had died, the world had gone still, the same stillness soldiers learned to fear. At 06:41, the first shot was heard, a single crack echoing through the valley. Then another and another. The enemy had arrived, not in dozens, but in waves. Ward grabbed the radio, only to hear static. The communications line had already been cut. They were alone, no reinforcements. No backup, no way out. What happened next has no surviving witness, only fragments recovered from the scene long after it ended. But from those fragments a story emerges, one of impossible resistance. The platoon divided into positions along the ridge. They had no heavy weapons, only rifles, a few machine guns, and the rugged ground beneath their boots. The enemy's first assault was fast, confident, overwhelming. Yet the 32 men on the ridge held the line, firing with precision born from desperation. For nearly an hour, the attackers couldn't break through. The ground shook with every blast, dust coating the air until the world looked like it was made of smoke. By 08:15, ammunition ran low. Ward ordered his men to fall back to the inner trench, a shallow curve of earth barely offering any cover. They dragged the wounded with them, 3 men unable to walk, 2 unconscious. No one was left behind, not yet. The second assault came harder. Mortars dropped like thunder, tearing the ridge apart piece by piece. By mid-morning, half the platoon was wounded, and the rest were running on nothing but instinct. Still, they fought. Every inch of the ridge became a battleground soaked with fire and grit. Ward moved from man to man, silent, steady, the kind of presence that turns fear into courage. Asterisk at 11:50, the enemy tried to flank from the eastern slope. That was when Sergeant Hale, a man known for his quiet humor, took 5 volunteers and intercepted them. What they did was never officially recorded. But when bodies were later found, it was clear those 6 men had engaged an entire company on their own. The ground where they fell was covered in spent shells. They had fought until no weapon remained loaded. By noon, only 19 men remained, and the enemy had begun surrounding the ridge. The fog lifted then, revealing the full size of the force against them. Ward must have known this was the end, yet something in the recovered evidence suggests he refused to give the order to retreat. Perhaps because retreat was impossible, or perhaps because retreat would mean the valley below was lost. As the sun reached its highest point, the ridge was hit by the third and final assault. Gunfire roared like a storm. Trees splintered, rocks shattered, men shouted for ammunition that wasn't there. The last recorded sound from a recovered helmet microphone was a soldier whispering, "They're still coming, Captain. What now?" What Ward answered will never be known. But we know what they did. Instead of surrendering, the remaining 19 men stood and fought with whatever they had left. Sidearms, knives, even stones and broken rifles. The battle turned into brutal, close combat. And for several minutes that felt like forever, they held the enemy in place, long enough for the valley civilians to escape the danger that was rapidly closing in. The official timeline places the last gunshot at 14:23. When reinforcements finally arrived at sunset, they found the ridge completely silent, smoke rising like ghosts from the ground, 13 enemy vehicles destroyed, countless casualties on both sides. And at the center, 30, two men who had given everything they had and more. Not a single one had survived. Their dog tags were collected and returned home, but reports were incomplete, scattered, and conflicting. Higher command suppressed the details, claiming the battle was strategically insignificant. The ridge was abandoned, the war moved on, and slowly their story faded into nothing. Decades later, a researcher reviewing old battlefield documents found an unmarked box containing fragments from the ridge, burnt journals, broken equipment, a cracked recording device, and a map scrawled with a single handwritten line. "Hold as long as we can." No signature, but everyone knows whose handwriting it was. Captain Elias Ward. Today, that ridge has no monument, no carved stone, no plaque, only wind moving through forgotten earth. But for the few who know the truth, this was not just another skirmish. It was a stand so impossible, so overwhelming, that its story survived only through the scars left on the land. This is the last stand no one recorded. A war story lost in time, but not lost forever, because today you have heard it, and now their courage lives again. Asterisk.